Well, hello, and welcome back to Reviving an Idler. It has been another exceptionally busy last couple of months, both in my private life but also on the boat as well. I'm looking forward to showing you some of the work we've been up to. First of all, however, a Merry Christmas from me. I hope you had a fantastic holiday season and you got some good time with your loved ones again. And I hope you're looking forward to a fantastic 2022. So earlier in the week we had good old Storm Arwen, and she came in and gave us a good old thrashing. So I've been spending the bulk of my time doing a bit of repair work. We lost the roof of the boat shed again, so I've had to put that back together. The workshop behind me, the back side there, all got completely scoured and stripped back, so I've ordered a new roof for that. So that should hopefully be here as soon as possible. So I'm laying up the framing on that just now, getting that all squared away. And I lost a good few tiles from my actual house as well, so that's been good fun sitting up there throughout all the cold blustery winds that we've had lately. Now, as we go towards the final installation of these frames, there's one last thing we need to look at, and that is going to be the floors. Now, we haven't really talked about them much before. Now, the floors in a boat such as this, a Carvel boat, have the very important role of actually tying the entire boat to the keel and then to the ballast keel as well. So it's one of those keystone parts of the boat which have tremendous loads put upon them, and people kind of overlook them, thinking they're maybe not quite so important. Perhaps paying more attention to the actual frames themselves rather than this little triangular bit of wood in the bottom of the boat. Now, this floor is made of oak, the same oak that the frames are made from. It's about 70mm or 2 inches, 2.5 inches thick, very solid, lovely knotted and marled and just really dense bit of timber there. Bolt running through the bottom which ties the ballast keel to the floor, and then there's 2 bolt holes to go in about roughly here and here. And before this actually gets installed in, I'll have to trace those marks because they go to the bronze bolts that were fastening the keel to the floor. Now I'll have to make those marks, copy them across to this and drill them out before we do the final installation. Now, if you've seen in earlier videos, the frame to floor connection were these bronze bars, just simply hammered through and then the ends basically pinned over, riveted over to make a little mushroom. And that is really all that is required to hold the floors to the frames. There shouldn't be any real twisting motion to the hull, sort of fore and aft. They are purely and simply to hold the frame to the floor and resist movement athwart ships. Okay, as soon as you start putting twisting in that way, it means you're having real problems with your deck structure, or your bilge stringers aren't doing their jobs properly. So I have no real reason to do anything different. Never mind this little opening, this little crack you're seeing here. That's because the pressure that we have on this frame at the moment is kind of pushing these planks out a little bit, so we need to get that readjusted before we actually do the final fit. But what I do want to do is make sure that that frame matches the floor where it should, and then I can fade away the backside of that frame to eliminate that gap. Before I drill any holes, bear in mind we are going to have nails coming through the plank into the floor and to the frame, so we need to make sure that we drill our hole for our rod so that we miss any possible interference with these nails. Now, one of the fun things of old boats is that you can do quite a lot of things by eye. You don't really need to be overly specific with your measurements. However, just to keep things just a little bit prettier, I am going to copy the locations of there across to the other side so we keep them roughly in the right place. Right then, let's pull these out for the last time, slap some goop on the underside, give them a final dressing, get our roves ready to go back in, and let's find out where these bolts are going to go. And then we can dust our hands and say, that's this one done and gone. Now, one of the nice things you get to do when you are restoring an old boat is you get to sort of update things and improve things slightly, or just put things how you would like them. And with that regard, the floor that we've now got here, we've got our holes drilled into it, ready to take the floors. It still needs a sanding and a tiny bit of a cleaning up. It's not been sanded yet. But you'll notice I've got 3 holes on each frame for the bronze rod. Now that is because I'm using this bent frame technique. So this section is going to be solid, so we could probably get away with sort of the old style 1 and 2, but up here there's still that kerf sawn in there. So essentially any sort of pressure athwartships happening in the frame is going to be exercising strain on these nails either side of it, which, to be honest, she's small enough and the framing etc is all sturdy enough that I don't think that's really going to be an issue. But in order to sort of spread that load a little bit, I have put a third rivet just in the middle here, just to try and spread the loading across the length of the frame, rather than just having a sort of a pivot point here and any stress up here. So that gives me the option here, so that's the reason I've drilled these 3 in here. The next step is to cut out our lengths of rod and pop one end into the fire and rove it over and see if we can just get that nice and mushroomed so that it can sit into there, and then we'll do the final roving once the 2 pieces are together and they're in the boat. I've just been making up some geralds using my templates. This one goes over the boat, the planking, and this is my actual gerald template. Marking them out, cutting them up, but I just wanted to show you something which I think is pretty cool. This is a bit of wood which I took from Idler's shear strake. It's all basically gone. There's far too many bits of rot, far many nail holes, etc. So it's kind of gone. But it's got a ring count of about 41 rings per inch. I mean, I don't think there's any way I can really show you that closely enough. I don't know if you can see that. I'll try and show you with a... I mean, that is a phenomenal ring count. I mean, good wood, you know, according to a lumber yard, is in the region of 10, 12 rings. That has got, ballpark, they're so close together I can barely count them. 41 rings and shear straight planking. They don't make trees like they used to, eh? With the nights drawing in, the old paraffin lamps come out, merely adding to the romanticism of the scene. straightforward. This is our Gerald template. So essentially what we've got is we're going to have one Gerald, which is going to go into every single one of these repairs. And instead of having to cut multiple ones and shape each individual one to fit an individual hole, what we do is we create ourselves a template. Using my router, pop that into the lowest or deepest part of the hole, so I've got the depth right. I can then router out this shape here, and that corresponds to a Gerald plug, which is exactly that size, which again, because I have a template for it, I can then manufacture quite quickly. So the whole idea of this is I can make holes and plugs very quickly that have exactly the same shape using the humble router. Routers of course have variable depths, so if I do need to go deeper with anything, of course I can just wind the router in and cut a slightly larger plug if I need to. So we can take care of quite a lot of this cosmetic damage to the outside quite quickly using this technique. Still, millions of these to do on the whole boat, so it's best that we do end up with some sort of quick way of doing that, and this is just the ticket for it. So I'll keep battering away with this, getting all these plugs in, getting them epoxied into place, and then we can put the final nails through these into the frames and get them squared away, and then we can move on to the next set. P.S. Why am I creeping around in the dark? Well, I am a working father, so I have all the duties that go with that, so the best time for working for me is when everybody's fast asleep, and that means the middle of the night. So if you are doing a job like this, and you do have kids, be prepared for a few extra late nights.
Now I'm away to start doing a little bit of gluing. I'm going to be using epoxy to put these Geralds back into place, the ones we've cut with the routers. Because it's so strong and because it is so resistant to any kind of movement, in particular the bend of the planking in an outward direction. Now, because it's such a thin Gerald, I'm not too worried about expansion and contraction through the plank. Now the big issue we have with using epoxy, especially in a cold northern climate, is temperature. Now obviously at the moment we are well below the 10 degree sort of threshold for using epoxies. Ballpark, I'm going to say 3 degrees-ish Celsius. So we're pretty cold. Now one of the advantages we have of using paraffin lighting in the workshop is that actually there's a great deal of heat comes off this. Now if I can hang this close to where we're doing the gluing, the radiated heat from that is going to be more than enough just to raise the temperature of the glue, just enough to do the job. I'll let this warm up, go and get the glue mixed up, and then we can start whacking in some of these Geralds. That's the start of another storm rolling in. I wonder if the roof will survive this one. Just had to patch up already another skin in here just because we're getting too much drips coming into the boat. Sheep don't seem to care though, they seem happy enough.
Sheep not so happy now. Now, one of the fun things that's come about after Storm Arwen is we've hopefully going to get a chance to get some of the wood out of this lovely old Scots pine tree. Now in particular I'm looking for the beam shelf and the build stringers. I'm also potentially looking for some planking as well. Now this lovely old Scots pine tree has been in this church ground from around about its inception, and that would be circa 1909, something like that. So we've got some nice old growth. It's not been in any plantation, so it's not been in direct competition with anything. So I'm hoping that it's been able to grow slowly without any interference from anything else, and that the actual growth ring should be nice and tight together, and we're getting a nice tight grain to some of this wood. In particular, one of the things that's been holding me back in terms of sourcing timber has been the restriction from the length. Now this is well over a 20 to 30 metre tree with a good solid trunk section in the region of probably 8 to 9 metres before it starts getting a bit complicated with some knotting and branching there. So I'm hoping to get some good stuff out of this tree. Now the special thing about this lump of wood in particular to me is that it's actually from home. I live not far at all from here, just a few fields away, and I'm really excited to potentially be putting a bit of wood back into the boat. So fingers crossed that we can get it, and more importantly we actually get it out of here, because we are in a limited access environment. But in particular for me, I am very excited to try and get this Scots pine back into the boat, because like I say already, it is from home, so fingers crossed we can get this one sorted out and that the wood turns out to be in good enough condition to use. So. Well, I'm feeling a little bit like a deer caught in the headlights just now. A couple of spotlights right in my face, trying to illuminate the scene a little bit for you. That just about wraps us up for this little episode here. Just again, keeping you up to date with the kind of work we have been up to in the boat. I just want to say a huge thank you to every single one of you. The plugging process here is becoming quite a thorn in my side at the moment, as I'm sure you'd agree at home. It's becoming quite a tiresome thing to see repeated again and again and again. It is a completely different animal, and it is not something that I particularly find any joy in whatsoever anymore. It's become an exact science all to itself, so I'm actually going to put together a smaller episode in the not too distant future covering just the plugging aspect, because it's one of these things that has grown so many avenues that there's a different plug for every particular problem I'm seeing. So it actually has become a bit of a science, and it's actually a little bit more interesting than it initially looks. So I'm going to roll that out to you at some point as well. However, in the meantime, a huge thank you to every single one of you. Even if you're just sitting at home and enjoying these episodes, thank you for coming along. If you're a patron, you're an absolute legend, and I salute you. Thank you so much for all your help with the project. There's been a little flux of new patrons recently, and I really appreciate that. You guys are legends. Thank you for coming along. I really greatly appreciate it. And all the way up to my long-suffering wife and child, who get to enjoy an absentee father almost at the moment, sneaking around in the dark instead of doing the washing up. So thank you very much to you guys at home as well, much appreciated. Well, until next time anyway, take it easy and cheers for now.